Hi, everybody. This is Allison from Alley Cat Creations. How are you? Hit that like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you have yet to do so. It's another way, a beautiful way to support the channel and myself. If you get anything from my work, a connect the dot, an epiphany, a mind explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, artwork to create, please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the video. Um, Check out my art portfolio at Allylatkereations211.com. That's where you can see a plethora of my artwork. A lot of this stuff will be uploaded during the week. Um, I have to carve out some time to do that. Uh, I'll get to that in a minute. 3D memberships is only one tier on my channel. I don't have multiple tiers. I only have one. 3D for now. And that gives you access to channel member only videos. I do oracle readings for my members. I tap in to the collective energy of just my members, and they get lovely messages delivered to them. And I held raffles once a month to do giveaways as a thank you to everybody. But channel members get a free entry into my raffle. So check that out if you're so inclined to do so. Someone won a $150 pyramid from me. Another person got to pick what paint and sip painting, and both are channel members. So you never know. Never ever know. So before I get into Blavatsky, I was gonna update my website, and then I got 4 minutes within me getting into my house, I got a ring-a-ding-ding at my door, and it was the power company that needed to look at my meter and change some things that weren't working properly because maybe my bill is overly high for whatever the reasons are. So I lost power for a bit until they got everything squeezy deezy. So I couldn't really go online and do much. Why this video is coming out a tad bit late. I do apologize. Um, I will be live tomorrow for a craft and sip. I still have a lot of crafting and sipping to do with some of the work. I got a cloud over there. This is one of the finished products. I have a vending event in March that I'm preparing for. Don't worry, that's tobacco. I'm in pain. That's coffee, by the way. So this beautiful stanza 10 is the history of the fourth race, the Atlantean race. This shall be very highly interesting for me, at least, and for many of you who like Atlantean stuff. Um, okay, I really got to get my eyes checked before I lose my health insurance again. Sorry, guys, I have to The birth of the fourth Atlantean race. The sub-races of the fourth humanity began to divide and to blend. They form the first mixed races of various colors. The superiority of the Atlantean over other races. They fall into sin and beget children and monsters. The first germs of anthropomorphism and sexual religion, they lose their third eye. Thus, two by two on the seven zones, the third race gave birth to the fourth race, men. The gods became no gods, Shor became Asura. The first race on every zone was moon-colored yellow-white, the second yellow like gold, and the third red, the fourth brown, which became black with sin. Oh boy, I don't like that. The first 7 human shoots were all of one complexion in the beginning. The next, the 7 subrace began mixing their colors. I'm going to put a pause here. This is the Blavatsky tackles the Vedic stuff and the Indian Buddhist stuff and perceptions. I don't align with any of that. I align with Ashyanadine's. Urantia goes into the races of color, and so does Ashyanadine. And Ashyanadine and the Urantia book are very similar. There's a lot of differentiation in that work. But when it comes to thus said this, there's no sin, no such thing. But we're going to go with it because this is Blavatsky. But you can agree to disagree. You can perceive however you would like your universe to be rationalized and manifested for you. So this is just my varied opinion. You don't have to align with it. You can align with Blavatsky, whatever you would like. I just think that this is a way for the programming and the narratives to start being fed to people when they go back and read these books. So refer back to history and Black equals sin. This is like where the things are being hidden and the agendas are starting to arise. I don't think she was promoting any of this stuff per se in a negative form, just saying and stating what she believes to be facts or maybe just perception. But I don't, some people read books as literal, and no. To understand this verse 38, it must be read together with the 3 verses of stanza 9. Up to this point of evolution, man belongs more to metaphysical than physical nature. It is only after the so-called fall that the races began to develop rapidly into a pure human shape. And in order that he may correctly comprehend the full meaning of the fall, so mystic and transcendental is it in its real significance, the student must be told at once the details which preceded this event, of which event modern theology has formed a pivot on which its most pernicious and absurd dogmas and beliefs are made to turn. The archaic commentaries explain, as the reader must remember, that the hosts of the Dhyanis, whose turn it was to incarnate as the egos of immortal, but on this plane, senseless monads, that some obeyed the law of evolution immediately when the men of the third race became physiologically and physically ready, when they had separated into sexes. These were those early conscious beings who, now adding conscious knowledge and will to their inherent divine purity, created by Chris Asti, the semi-divine man who became the seed on earth for future adepts. Those, on the other hand, who, jealous of their intellectual freedom, unfettered, as it then was by the bonds of matter, said, "We can choose. We have wisdom." And incarnated far later, these had their first karmic punishment prepared for them. They got bodies physiologically inferior to their astral models because their chayas had belonged to progenitors of inferior degree in the 7 classes. As to those sons of wisdom who had deferred their incarnation till the 4th race, which was already tainted physiologically with sin and impurity, they produced a terrible cause, the karmic result of which weighs on them to this day. It was produced in themselves, and they became the carriers of that seed of inequity for eons to come, because the bodies they had to inform had become defiled through their own procrastination. This was the fall of the angels because of their rebellion against karmic law. The fall of men was not fall, for he was irresponsible, but creation, having been invented on the dualistic system as a prerogative of God alone. The legitimate attribute patented, patent, I can't project this stupid word, by theology in the name of an infinite deity of their own making. This power, this power had to regard as satanic and as an usurpation of divine rights. Thus, the foregoing in the light of such narrow views must naturally be considered as terrible slander on man. Created in the image of God, a still more dreadful blasphemy in the face of the dead letter dogma. I agree. Your doctrine, the occultists were already told, makes of men created out of dust in the likeness of his God, a vehicle of the devil from the first. Why did you make of your God a devil, both moreover created in your own image? Is our reply. The esoteric interpretation of the Bible, however, sufficiently refutes the slanderous invention of the theology. The secret doctrine must someday become the just karma of the churches, more anti-Christian than the representative assemblies of the most conformed materialists and atheists. We'll see how this goes before I comment. The old doctrine about the true meaning of the fallen angels in its anthropological and evolutionary sense is contained in the Kabbalah and explains the Bible. It is found preeminent in Genesis, when the latter is read in a spirit of research for truth, with no eye to dogma and in no mood of preconception. This is easily proven in Genesis. The sons of God, B'nai Alem, became enamored of the daughters of men, married and revealed to their wives the mysteries unlawfully learned by them in heaven, according to Enoch. And this is the fall of angels. But what is in reality the Book of Enoch itself, from which the author of Revelation and even the St. John of the fourth gospel had so profusely quoted? Verse 8 in chapter 10 about all who have come before Jesus being thieves and robbers. Simply a book of initiation given out in allegory and cautious phraseology, the program of certain archaic mysteries performed in the inner temples. The author of the sacred mysteries among the Mayas and Quinches very justly suggests that the so-called visions of Enoch related to Enoch's experience of initiation and what he learned in the mysteries, while he very erroneously states his opinions that Enoch had learned them before being converted to Christianity. Furthermore, he believes that this book was written at the beginning of the Christian era, when the customs and religion of the Egyptians fell into decadency. This is hardly possible, since Jude quotes in his epistle from the Book of Enoch, and therefore, as Archbishop Lawrence, the translator of the Book of Enoch from the Ethiopic version, remarks, it could not have been the product of a writer who lived after, or was even coeval with the writers of the New Testament, unless, indeed, Jude and the Gospels and all the follows was also a production of the already established church, which some critics say it is not impossible. But we are concerned with the fallen angels of Enoch rather than with Enoch himself. I'm going to pause here because what the F, and this is genius. I read the Book of Enoch on my channel. In other literature, and possibly this one, I don't remember. I read a lot. Enoch is just a term for a group of people, or like say Archangel Michael. It's not an actual entity, it's multiplicity of fractals of an entity. It's a bunch of things, not just one, because we're all one anyway. Just to put into my own little perception here, I don't do the dualistic thing anymore, and good evil, the fall is really, if you look at it in an energetic sense and sciencey sense, we densified into matter. We became material. We live in a materialistic world. We live in material. We have objects. I mean, are they actually real, or they're subatomic particles whizzing through space and time of linear sorts of their density that we perceive as being physically sturdy, but they're vibrating. At any rate, they're vibrating. In Indian exotericism, these angels, asuras, are also denounced as the enemies of the gods, those who oppose sacrificial worship offered to the latter. In Christian theology, they are broadly referred to as the fallen spirits, the heroes of various conflicting and contradictory legends about them gathered from pagan sources. The Coluber Tortorius, the torturous snake, however you pronounce that in the other language, a qualification said to have originated with the Jews and quite another meaning before the Roman Church distorted it. Among others, a purely astronomical meaning. The serpent fallen from on high was credited with the possession of the keys of the empire of the dead. To that day, when Jesus saw it falling like lightning from heaven, the Roman Catholic interpretation of that, there's a phrase there, I'm not reading that. To the contrary, notwithstanding, and it means indeed that even the devils are subject to the Logos, who is wisdom, but who, as the opponent of ignorance, is Satan or Lucifer at the same time. This remark refers to divine wisdom falling like lightning on and quickening the intellects of those who fought the devil's ignorance and superstition. Okay, sorry, have to pause again in my own perception. If God said, let there be light, like, so the cosine waves, the subatomic particles whizzing through duality of a positive pole and a negative pole, and thus created the field of consciousness, photons, neutrons, gluons, muons, and all the subatomic particles that consist of consciousness of light. And we fell into form as consciousness, and each wave of the experiment we're here. Lucifer, therefore, and the devil is just a negative polarized aspect of source, God, whatever you want to label him as. All for experience, wisdom, walking through experience to gain the wisdom for soul growth, and God, the infinite creator, knowing itself in every situational, in every fractal form. Sorry. And that's my interpretation and insight. Up to the time when wisdom in the shape of the incarnating spirits of Mahat descended from on high to animate and call the third race to real conscious life, humanity, if it can be so called in its animal senseless state, was of course doomed to moral as well as physical death. The angels fallen into generation are referred to metaphorically as serpents and dragons of wisdom. On the other hand, regarded in the light of the Logos, the Christian savior, like Krishna, whether as man or Logos, may be said to have saved those who believe in the secret teachings from eternal death, to have conquered the kingdom of darkness or hell, as every initiate does. This in the human terrestrial form of the initiates, and also because the Logos is Christos, the principle of our inner nature, which develops in us into the spiritual ego, the higher self, being formed of the indissoluble union of Buddha, the sixth, and the spiritual efflorescence of manas, the fifth principle. The Logos is passive, wisdom in heaven, and conscious self-active wisdom on earth, we are taught. It is the marriage of heavenly man with the virgin of the world, nature, as described in Primander. the result of which is their progeny, immortal man. It is this which is called in St. John's Revelation the marriage of the Lamb with his bride. That wife is now identified with the Church of Rome owing to the arbitrary interpretation of her vortices. But they seem to forget that her linen may be fine and white outwardly, like the whitened sepulchre, but that the rottenness she is inwardly filled with is not the righteousness of saints, but rather the blood of the saints she has slain upon the earth. Thus, the remark made by the great initiate in Luke, one that referred allegorically in the ray of enlightenment and reason falling like lightning from on high into the hearts and minds of the converts to that old wisdom religion, when presented in a new form by the wise Galilean adept, was distorted out of recognition, as was his own personality, and made to fit it in with one of the most crucial as most pernicious of all theological dogmas. But if Western theology alone holds a patent for and copyright of Satan, in all the dogmatic horror of that fiction, other nationalities and religions have committed equal errors in their misinterpretation of this tenet, which is one of the most profoundly philosophical ideal concepts of ancient thought, for they have both disfigured and hinted at the correct meaning of it in their numerous allegories touching the subject. Nor have the semi-esoteric dogmas of Puranic Hinduism failed to evolve very suggestive symbols and allegories concerning the rebellious and fallen gods. The Puranas teem with them, and we find a direct hint at the truth in the fragment allusions of Parasara, Vishnu Purana, to all those Rudas, Rishis, Asuras, Kumaras, and Munis having to be born in every age to reincarnate in every Manvantara. This esoterically is equivalent to saying that the flames born of the universal mind, Mahat, owing to the mysterious workings of karmic will and an impulse of evolutionary law, had, as in Primander, without any gradual transition, landed on this earth, having broken through the 7 cycles of fire, or the 7 intermediate worlds, in short. There is an eternal cycle law of rebirths, and the series is headed at every new Manvaratic dawn by those who had enjoyed their rest from reincarnation in previous Kaplas for incalculable eons, by the highest and earliest Nirvanis. It was a turn of those gods to incarnate in the present Manvarata, hence their presence on earth, and the ensuing allegories, hence also the perversion of the original meaning. The gods who had fallen into generation, whose mission it was to complete divine man, are found represented later on as demons, evil spirits, and fiends, at feud and war with gods, or the irresponsible agents of the one eternal law. But no conception of such creatures as the devils and Satan of the Christian, Jewish, Mohammedan religions were ever intended under those 1,001 Aryan allegories. The true esoteric view about Satan, the opinion held on this subject by the whole philosophic antiquity, is admirably brought out in an appendix entitled The Secret of Satan, to the 2nd edition of Dr. A. Kingford's Perfect Way. No better and clearer indication of the truth could be offered to the intelligent reader, and it is therefore quoted here at some length. Quote, "And on the 7th day, 7th creation of the Hindus, there went forth from the presence of God a mighty angel, full of wrath and consuming, and God gave him the dominion of the outermost sphere. Eternity brought forth time, the boundless gave birth to limit, being descended into generation. Among the gods is none like unto him, into whose hands are committed the kingdoms, the power and the glory of the worlds, thrones and empires, the dynasties of kings, the fall of nations, the birth of churches, the triumph of time. For as is said in Hermes, Satan is the doorkeeper of the temple of the king. He standeth in Solomon's porch. He holdeth the key of the sanctuary, that no man enter therein save the anointed, having the achium of Hermes. These suggestive and majestic verses had reference with the ancient Egyptians and other civilized people of antiquity to the creative and generative light of the Logos, Horus, Brahma, Ahura Mazda, as primeval manifestations of ever unmanifested principle, Aeon Soph, Para Brahman, Zirvana, boundless time, Kala. But the meaning is now degraded into the Kabbalah, the anointed who has the secrets and mysteries of Hermes, Buddha, wisdom, and who alone is entrusted with the key to the sanctuary, the womb of nature, in order to fructify it and call it to active life and bring the whole cosmos, has become with the Jews Jehovah, the God of generation, on the lunar mountain Sinai, the mountain of the moon, Sin. The sanctuary has become the Holy of Holies, and the arcanum has been anthropomorphized and phallicized and dragged down into matter indeed. Hence arose the necessity of making of the dragon of wisdom and the serpent of Genesis, of the conscious God who needed a body to clothe his too subjective divinity, Satan. But the innumerable incarnations of spirit and the ceaseless pulse and current of desire refer the first one to our doctrine of karmic and cyclic births, the second to Eros, not the latter God of material physiological love, but the divine desire in the gods as well as in nature to create and give life to beings. This is the rays of the one, dark, because invisible and incomprehensible flame could achieve only by themselves descending into matter. Therefore, as continued in the appendix, quote, many names have God given him, Satan, names of mystery, secret, and terrible. The adversary, because matter opposeth spirit, time accuseth even saints of the Lord. Stand in awe of him and sin not. Speak his name with trembling, for Satan is the magistrate of the justice of God, karma. He beardeth the balance and the sword. For him are committed weight and measure and number, end quote. Compare the last sentence with what the rabbi who explains the Kabbalah to Prince al-Shazari in the book of that name says, and it will be found that the weight and measure and number are in Sefer Yitzraya, and attributes of the Sitharoth, the three seraphim, or figure ciphers, covering the whole collective number of 10. And the Sitharoth are the collective Adam Kadmon, the heavenly man, or the Logos. Thus Satan and the anointed were identified in ancient thought. Therefore, quote, Satan is the minister of God, Lord of the seven mansions of Hades. The seven, or Sabbataloka, holy crap, of the earth was the Hindus. For Hades, or the limbo of illusion, I love that, limbo of illusion, of which theology makes a region broadening on hell, is simply our globe, the earth. Thus Satan is called the angel of the manifested worlds. It is Satan who is the God of our planet and the only God, and this without any elusive metaphor to its wickedness and depravity. For he is one with the Logos, the first son, eldest of the gods. In order of microcosmic divine evolution, Saturn, Satan, astronomically, is the seventh and last in the order of the macrocosm, emanation being the circumference of the kingdom of which Phobos, the light of wisdom, also the sun, is the center. The Gnostics were right then in calling the Jewish God an angel of matter, or he who breatheth conscious life into Adam, and whose planet was Saturn. And God hath put a girdle about his loins, the rings of Saturn, and the name of the girdle is death. In anthropogeny, This girdle is the human body with its two lower principles, which three die, which the innermost man is immortal. And now we approach the secret of Satan. Upon Satan only is the shame of generation. He hath lost his virginal estate. So hath the Kumara by incarnating, uncovering heavenly secrets. He hath entered into bondage. He compasseth with bonds and limits all things. Twain are the armies of God in heaven, the hosts of Michael. In the abyss, the manifested world, the legions of Satan. These are the unmanifested and manifested, the free and the bound in matter, the virginal and the fallen, and both are the ministers of the Father, fulfilling the word divine thereof. Holy is the Sabbath of God, blessed and sanctified in the name of the angel of Havas, Satan. For the glory of Satan is the shadow of Lord, God in the manifested world. Yes! The throne of Satan is the footstool of Adonai, the footstool being the whole cosmos. Is Pleroma Satan's lair? Sorry, me saying yes is halal reacting. Just put this into thought. If you took out what you've been indoctrinated into and you just read this objectively, and you put into the notion that we are all one, fractalized, individualized in separation and limitation in this density, we densified into matter. And just like this is saying, we were the rishis, the Daihan, Kohanis, we were the angels, the fallen angels, we were all things. All of our consciousness is a field, it's a quantum state. And each of those states are fractals off into other densities and dimensional spaces where you are also at in one of these forms. And you came down and densified, just like they're saying in this book, in a human form. The keynote is that there's a veil of forgetting. So you forget your divinity, you forget what you are in all totality sense. Why I laughed is because the adversary is the negative aspect of God. It's a shadow. Without contrast, light and dark, there would be no meaning to life. If you didn't have obstacles to overcome, you didn't have adversity in your life, there would be no mission here on earth to gain soul wisdom and upgrade yourself to actually ascend into another dimensional space consciously. You can't do that if you don't have contrast. And one of the roles that Yeshua is the light and Lucifer is the shadow. And it's not to say like what Satanism is today has been so inverted and obstructed. And I'm not saying it's a good religion at all. It's been really, really heavily inversed. And it's really notioning to manifest the negativity of thought form of people's wills to power in the negative zone. So your thoughts create things, your thoughts can manifest and attract things into your life. If I wanted this home, I had to manifest it. I had to sit and do a lot of work to have a cause and effect. Action into motion has a cause and effect. Therefore, your manifestation is there in divine timing. This took eons for souls to come and incarnate for this time of now. I'm talking about the now moment, not the book moment. Put this book in perspective into the here and now. And start understanding your piece of the pie in this totality. If you follow divine neutrality, at least non-duality, you will understand what I'm saying. It doesn't necessarily effing matter. Not physical matter, but actually matter. Doesn't. Sadly, sorry. Love you all. And this is the stuff that I'm trying to gap with most people when doing these books, is saying, okay, like, and she's on it. Like she's describing this stuff, but in different ways that I say, maybe you just have to hear it in a different frequency. I don't know. But once we have an open mind to get rid of the limitation, the separation, and the indoctrination and the program that in all of us still lies in the operating system, you start deleting it and you get the buggies out. It's just think about AOL dial-up. We're no longer in AOL dial-up. Now we're going into the AI quantum network, where only what you perceive is manifested. Quantum states can only be observed, can only be measured and looked upon as the observer looks at it. So as you unfold and create your reality, you're unfolding layers of density and dimensional spaces via vibration and frequency. And it's up to you to have some clean, pure thoughts in order to create a better world for all of us. The church, therefore, curses Satan. It curses the cosmic reflection of God. It anathematizes. I will never get that projection out. God made manifest in matter, or the objective. It maledicts God, or the ever incomprehensible wisdom, revealing itself as light and shadow, good and evil in nature, in the only manner comprehensible to the limited intellect of man. This is the true philosophical and metaphysical interpretation of Samael, or Satan, the adversary in the Kabbalah. The same tenets and spirit being found in the allegorical interpretations of every other ancient religion. This philosophical view does not interfere, however, with the historical records connected with it. We say historical because allegory and mythical or ornamentation around the kernel of tradition is in no wise prevent the kernel being a record of real events. Thus, the Kabbalah, sorry, repeating the time-honored revelations of the once universal history of our globe and the evolution of its race, has presented it under the legendary form of the various records which have formed the Bible. Its historical foundation is now offered in, however, imperfect a form on these pages from the Secret Doctrine of the East, and thus the allegorical and symbolical meaning of the serpent of Genesis is found explained by the sons of wisdom, or angels from higher spheres, do all and each pertain to the kingdom of Satan, or matter, revealing to men the mysteries of heaven. Hence also all the so-called myths of the Hindu, Grecan, Chaldean, and Jewish pantheons are found to be built on that fact and truth. The giants of Genesis are the historical Atlanteans of Lanka and the Greek Titans. Who can forget that Troy was once upon a time proclaimed a myth and Homer a non-existing personage, while the existence of such cities as Heracleum and Pompeii were denied and attributed to mere fairy legends. Yet Schillmann proved that Troy had really existed, and the two cities, though buried for long ages under the Vesuvian lava, have had their resurrection day and live again on the surface of the earth. How many more cities and localities called fabulous are on the list of future discoveries? How many more personages regarded as mythical will one day become historical? Those alone can tell who read the decrees of fate in the astral light. As the tenets of Eastern doctrine, however, have always been kept secret, as the reader can hardly hope to be shown the original texts unless he becomes an accepted disciple, let the Greek and Latin scholar turn to the original texts of Hermetic literature. Let him, for one thing, read carefully the opening pages of Primander of Hermes Trismegistus. I read that on this channel. And then he will see the doctrines collaborated in it, however veiled its text. He will find the evolution of the universe of our earth called nature in primander, as of everything else from the moist principle, or the great depth, father, mother, the first differentiation in the manifested cosmos. First, the universal mind, which the hand of the Christian translator has metamorphosized in the earliest renderings into God the Father, then the heavenly man, which is the great total of the host of angels, which was too pure for the creation of the inferior worlds or of the men of our globe, but which fell nevertheless into matter by virtue of the same evolution as the second logos of the Father. Synthetically, every creative logos or the Son who is one with the Father is the host of the rectors mundi in itself. Even Christian theology makes of the seven angels of the presence the virtues or the personified attributes of God, which being created by him as a manus, were by Brahma being archangels. The Roman Catholic Theodice itself recognizes in its creative verbum precepts the head of those angels, and the Latin version of the words I can't read. The angel of the great council thus recognizes the identity of Christ and those angels. Interesting. The gods became no gods, Asura, says the text. Gods became fiends. Satan, when read literally, but Satan will now be shown in the teaching of the secret doctrine, allegoricized as good, and sacrifice a god of wisdom under different names. The Kabbalah teaches that pride and presumption, the two chief prompters of selfishness and egotism, are the causes that emptied heaven of 1/3 of its divine denizens, mystically, and 1/3 of the stars astronomically. In other words, the two statements are the first an allegory and the second a fact. The former, nevertheless, as shown, is intimately connected with humanity. In their turn, the Rosicrucians were well acquainted with the secret meaning of the tradition, kept it to themselves, teaching merely the whole creation was due to sorry, I was trying to pause. Keep it to themselves, teaching merely that the whole of creation was due to and the result of the legendary war in heaven, brought on by the rebellion of the angels against creative law or the demiurge. The statement is correct, but the inner meaning is to this day a mystery. To elude further explanation of the difficulty by appealing to the divine mastery or to the sin of prying into its policy, it is to say nothing at all. It may prove sufficient to believe in the Pope's infallibility, but will hardly satisfy the philosophical mind. Yet the truth, although known to most of the higher Kabbalists, have never been told by any of their number. One and all Kabbalists and symbologists show an extraordinary reluctance to confess the primitive meaning of the fall of the angels. In Christian, such silence is only natural. Neither alchemist nor philosopher could, during the medieval ages, utter that which, in the sight of the orthodox theology, was a terrible blasphemy, for it would have led them directly through the holy office of the Inquisition to stake and rack. But for our modern Kabbalists and free thinkers, the case is different. With the latter, we fear it is merely human pride, vanity based on a loudly rejected and ineradicable superstition. Since the church, in her struggle with Manichaeism, invented the devil, and by placing a theological extinguisher on the radiant star god Lucifer, the son of the morning, thus created the most gigantic of all her paradoxes, a black and tremendous light. The myth has struck its roots too deep in the soil of blind faith to permit, in our age, even those who do not acquiesce in her dogmas and laugh at her horned and cloven-footed Satan, to come out bravely and confess the antiquity of the oldest of all traditions. In a brief word, it is the semi-exoterically the firstborn of the Almighty, Fiat Lux, or the angels of primordial light, were commanded to create. 1/3 of them rebelled and refused, while those who obeyed as Fethil did fail most signally. Interesting. To realize the refusal and failure in their correct physical meaning, one must study and understand Eastern philosophy. One has to be acquainted with the fundamental mystical tenets of the Vedas with a regard to the utter fallacy of attributing functional activity to the infinite and absolute deity. Esoteric philosophy maintains that during the Sannyas, the central sun emits creative light, passively, so to say. Causality is latent. It is only during the active periods of being that it gives rise to a stream of ceaseless energy whose vibrating currents acquire more activity and potency with every rung of the hebdomadic ladder of being which they descend. Hence, it becomes comprehensible how the process of creating, or rather of fashioning the organic universe with all its units of the seven kingdoms, necessitated intelligent beings who become collectively a being or creative God, differentiated already from the one absolute unity, unrelated as the latter is to the condition creation. I'm going to leave this here because this stanza is ridiculously long. And I'm sneezing, and I sneeze on camera for the first time. Congratulations for those of you who saw that. I tried to pause. That didn't work. I have my heater on. It was a heat wave here in Northwest Indiana at 50 something degrees, and obviously it's getting cold again as it's getting dark. So I hope all of you have a fantastic and beautiful day. Please, I'll be on tomorrow. Check me out. I do crafts, I talk spiritual, and it's a fun time. And I have amazing, beautiful souls that come into the chat and are very well versed and open to giving love and healing. So please come and join me tomorrow. I will be live. I don't know what time yet because it all depends upon what time I get home from work. My electric was out for a bunch. Hopefully it stays on. I haven't had an issue. All the fun stuff, right? Life throws at you. But until the next one, guys, sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within. Be the shoulder, be the lighthouse, seed your truths, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support, my appreciation and love for everybody who helps me out in whatever way that you can. What a day. So I hope to see you all tomorrow when I'm live, and have a blessed and beautiful day. Bye for now.